Cowgirl. I wanted to bring you a video today to show you one of my favorite recipes that I created that I like to use to do something with all the zucchini that I have in my garden right now. If you saw my video from last week, I posted a video showing some of the vegetables and fruits that you can grow in your garden if you follow a paleo or AIP diet. And one of the things that I like to grow is squash, a variety of different kinds of squash. One of my favorites is zucchini because you can use it for so many different things. And this is just the first recipe I'm going to show. I will also be showing some others that I like to make. But the one today, many of you have probably made this before, is zucchini bread. Tastes nothing like zucchini once you're done with it. It just tastes like a really good cinnamon bread, and the zucchini adds a lot of moisture to it and fiber as well. So I want to walk you through how I make mine. It is a gluten-free and a keto or low-carb recipe. And I say it's keto because it is very low in carbs. Now, how am I going to make that? It's a bread, so it has a lot of flour in it, obviously. Well, as a dietitian and someone who follows a gluten-free and a fairly low-carb diet, and one that is a paleo diet for the most part, I've done a lot of experimentation with different kinds of flours. Now, this recipe is not specifically a paleo recipe. So if you follow a strict AIP or paleo diet, this would not be the recipe for you. You could probably modify it though to make it fit the paleo diet. One of the flours that you'll see in a lot of paleo recipes that have flour in them is almond flour. Almond just happens to be one of those nuts that I can't tolerate, but if it's good for you, you could definitely use almond flour, probably in place of some of the flours that I use. I say probably because I haven't tested it out, so I don't really know how well it would work. But I'm going to show you the flours that I use. I use a blend of 3 different flours, and like I said, have experimented with many different flour types and different combinations, and I vary the ratios of different flours depending on what I'm making. For this particular recipe, this blend works well in the proportions that I use. So I will post the recipe on my blog, and I will put a link to the recipe in the description below the video so you can go and see the exact recipe if you want to. But I want to just walk you through the 3 flours that I like to use in this bread. So the first one that I use is one you're probably familiar with. This is coconut flour. It is very low in carbs. It has about 1 gram of carbs per tablespoon. So if you use 1/4 of a cup of coconut flour, then you're going to get 4 grams of carbs. So pretty low in carbs, high in fiber. So that's one of the ones. It does absorb a lot of water. So you want to keep that in mind. That's why I always have to experiment and find out what the right proportion is and then how much liquid I need to get the right texture. So coconut flour is one of the flours I use. The next one I use is lupin flour. Now, lupin flour is something that I just this year discovered, and it's amazing. It's very low in carbs. It's also very high in protein and fiber. So per tablespoon of lupin flour, you're going to get about 4 grams of protein and 4 grams of fiber, and just less than 1 gram of carbs. It's about 1/2 gram of carbs per tablespoon. It's also a good source of calcium, magnesium, and potassium. So very, very healthy flour. I love it. It does not absorb as much liquid as the coconut flour. So you can use it more like you would wheat flour. It's still more absorbent, I feel like, but again, not nearly to the extent of the coconut flour. But I love lupin flour. This is what I use in the greatest amount in the zucchini bread. My third flour that I'm using is called tiger nut flour. Some of you may be familiar with tiger nut flour, especially if you've been on the AIP diet for a little while. I find that most of my clients do not know about tiger nut flour, but it's really great. I love to use it. What it looks like is it's kind of a light brown flour. It's a little bit darker and more brown color than the lupin or coconut flours, and it has a graham flavor, which I love. It's naturally sweet, just a little bit sweet, but if you don't eat much sugar, it does taste sweet, and it really tastes similar to graham crackers. So I love to use it in pie crusts, and I like to use it in cookies as well, really, because it adds a little bit of that sweetness. But it does have a more dense texture, so it needs to be combined, in my opinion, with a lighter flour, which coconut flour, because it absorbs so much liquid, tends to produce a lighter texture, and then the lupin flour does as well. So those are the 3 flours that I combine in this gluten-free keto zucchini bread to give it some of that lightness and also very low carbs. Again, the lupin flour in particular has a lot of protein in it, and all 3 flours are a great source of fiber. So it's just a really, really healthy bread. I absolutely love it. One thing that I will say that I learned when I was developing this recipe is that I think that it works better either in a cake pan or in muffin tins rather than like a loaf pan. I'm calling it zucchini bread, but I think that it works better when it's made in a smaller size or in a 9x9 pan where you're kind of spreading it out and you're not expecting it to rise as much. Because these flours are more dense and they just don't quite rise the same way that wheat flour with gluten does. But I have 2 secret ingredients that will still give your bread a nice chew and not make it as crumbly as some gluten-free products can tend to be that you bake at home. So I'm going to show you those ingredients as well, and then I'll let you just watch me make the whole recipe. And then, as I said, I'll link the recipe and I'll give you a link to my blog where you can find the whole recipe if you want to try this at home. But the 2 ingredients that I like to use when I'm making gluten-free baked goods are gelatin. I like to use grass-fed beef gelatin. You can also find gelatin that's sourced from eggs, and you can, find like free-range eggs, and that can be your source of gelatin as well. I just usually buy the grass-fed beef gelatin, but this is really, really healthy, and it's great to kind of provide that chew that you don't often get in gluten-free baked goods. And then another ingredient that really helps as well is something I recently found out about. It's called konjac root. And this is konjac root powder. I use this in small amounts along with the gelatin, and it really, really absorbs water for one thing, and it provides some of that chewiness and kind of helps bond the ingredients together. Now, if you're on the strict AIP diet, you can't have eggs, but the paleo diet does include eggs. I can tolerate eggs well, so I use eggs also. And you'll see gelatin used in some AIP recipes as an egg substitute. I did have to do that for a while. It's not a great egg substitute, but it's better than nothing. But then once I was able to start eating eggs, I found that I still liked using the gelatin, and now I like that combination of gelatin and the konjac root powder. Just to provide, like I said, like a bonding agent and bonding action in the gluten-free baked goods. So I'm going to combine all of those together and then add in my wet ingredients and my zucchini. And finally, I don't want to skip this since it's sugar. This is actually a sugar-free recipe as well, which helps to lower the carb content, obviously. My favorite sugar substitute, and I've tried at least a dozen of them, is this one. This is monk fruit in the raw. I am not a marketer for them. I don't get any sort of reimbursement or any sort of commission or anything for recommending this, but I've just tried so many sugar substitutes and I love this one, so I just wanted to share this with you guys. Again, it's definitely not AIP because it has erythritol in it. It wouldn't fit the paleo definition either. So there are some others. You could use stevia, like stevia in the raw, which is just straight stevia. That's allowed on the AIP diet. Well, it's allowed on the AIP diet, not the strict elimination phase, but once you kind of transition to like the AIP paleo version, I do know some people who use stevia. I try to stick with pure stevia as much as I can, but it's just not exactly the same in baked goods. This, though, acts literally just like sugar. It's pretty amazing. So it's just a combination of monk fruit and erythritol. I really, really like it. It's granulated, just exactly like sugar. Like, I've even had friends use it when they're over here and they can't tell the difference at all. So this is what I like. It is expensive. This 1 pound bag is $8, and I have not been able to find it cheaper anywhere, but I'm still looking. But this is what I like to use, and then I try to still use as little as possible. But this is my sweetener of choice. I've also used madhava. I've ordered that from Amazon before. That's an allulose blend, and I like that as well. So you could try that also if you wanted to. And then, of course, if you can tolerate sugar, go for it. You could use sugar as well, but it will raise the carb content considerably. So I'm going to start making this bread, and you can watch. And like I said, go on over to my blog if you want the full recipe. Talk to you guys later. Bye. my favorite zucchini bread recipe. I like to put walnuts in mine. You could put any kind of nuts or leave them out if you don't like nuts. Also, there are 2 tricks that I have learned that help a lot when making any kind of breads with lupin flour. One is that you may have noticed that I sprayed the muffin cups. I use the paper liners, but then I also spray the paper liners with avocado oil, or you could use another kind of cooking spray if you wanted to. It just helps them not to stick to the liners when you take them out and then they cool. They kind of tend to stick even when they're perfectly cool. The other thing that I like to do to get the exact same size, if I'm doing them in a muffin tin, to have every muffin the same size, is to use an ice cream scoop. And you can find those at food service supply stores. You can find them even at Target and places like that now. But those are really, really good for cookie dough and for muffin batter, so that you make sure that you have the same size of every one. Doesn't really matter if you're just making them for your family maybe, but I sell at farmers markets as well. So I definitely like to have quality control and have portion control so that everybody's getting the same size product when they're buying things. So that's something that I learned in my food service days and still use it today. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. If you try it and like it, please leave me a comment and let me know how it goes. Y'all have a blessed day. Talk to you soon.